All right. Beautiful. Tech stuff is done. Guys, welcome. Welcome to this amazing broadcast where I've got the lovely Samara Dujardin here to speak with us. Samara is a health and wellbeing coach and she is trained in many modalities, counseling, psychology, hypnotherapy, different modalities of coaching. Um, she really has a passion for just working with others and really helping them to live their best lives and definitely work through any health issues, even if it's just something as little, which is actually huge, as stress. She's really big on helping people to work with health, well-being, and business. She works with a lot of entrepreneurs. So she's going to share her wisdom with us today and share her top 5 tips for moving through adversity with peace, because a lot of us are rattled by adversity, with empowerment, because a lot of us feel totally helpless, and with positivity, because when adversity strikes and when crisis times, which we've all had some degree of this year, strike, we do tend to get on the negative side and our brains are wired towards a negative direction. So, Samara, welcome. Thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Bianca, for that lovely introduction. It's so nice to chat to you and run through these things. Yeah.
I am excited to have you here. And I'm basically going to hand over to Samara to share all that she's got to share now. And I will pipe in if I have any questions, and I'll keep an eye out on Facebook as well if you guys watching live have any questions.
Great. Okay, so what I thought I would chat about today are 5 different aspects of ways that you can choose to deal with stress, choose to deal with illness, any kind of difficult circumstances that come up in your life that are causing impact to you. And these are ways that have really helped me get through dark times, ways that I have shared with my clients to help them get through dark times. And I think that you can use them in all different areas of your life when you're experiencing uncomfortable emotions. A lot of it I base upon from mindset, ways that your mind can be, I guess, looking at things, mindfulness, perspective, the power of choice that we have, different things like that are all in our power to be able to change how we actually deal with a situation. So I'll just go over the 5 things that I'm going to talk about and then break them down a bit and include my own experience. Bianca, yes.
I have a question already. I just thought it might be cool if you wanted to share a little bit about what you've been through, like even personally this year, like living in Melbourne, some of the stuff that's gone on in your life, some of the adversity that you've kind of faced of late.
Yeah.
That would be really
absolutely.
Cool.
Sure.
Because I know that, but these guys don't know that.
Yeah, I will share some. I would say over the last few years, anyone that is close to me would know that I have experienced a bit of adversity, some self-inflicted, but some that has come out of nowhere, like COVID for everybody. And a lot of it, I can relate to these things because it's really tested me. One example that I might touch on a few times over this chat is that last year I made a big decision to follow a bit of a dream and go to the United States, for a work visa. And it didn't go according to plan. I had left with a few unresolved health issues, I guess, but none that I wasn't confident that I would be able to cope with over there. But they blew up a bit over there, and some of those were food issues. I am highly intolerant to gluten. If I even have like a little crumb somehow, it will kind of set me off for the week. And that was hard to avoid there. And that's just like one. And I got insomnia. A a lot of things just weren't going right. For some reason, my body was deciding to fall a bit apart, and it was very stressful. And then I was hit with vertigo, which I haven't experienced before. Well, I hadn't experienced before that time. And it was very scary. I started seeing doctors and things like that over there, but the conclusion was that I needed to go home because it wasn't going away. And it was making it too hard to function there. Like, I couldn't work. I couldn't really, vertigo, it brings on balance issues depending on I guess, how extreme it is for you. But I was having trouble with my orientation. And so it was a bit of a shock, and definitely an example of adversity, because I'd planned for that trip for a number of years. I think it was on my mind and in the making for like 4 years, 4 years until I got there. And as you can imagine, it was a lot of money and all of the rest, but I went home, and I was faced with a lot of problems because I couldn't work. I lived with my mum, and I did go into a bit of a dark place. The stress of it all got on top of me, and I used a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about to be able to cope. And it brought up a lot of other health concerns as well. So I did have a bit on my plate to kind of to cope with. And then after that, as Bianca said, even this year there's adversity. I finally did come to a place where I could move out and start working. And then that was after about 7 months of just being a lot of time spent in my room at my mum's. With vertigo, it can be hard to be active. There was a lot of time I just spent in bed. And then moved out, but then COVID happened. So it was like, well, back stuck in a room, as I'm sure everybody has shared that experience in a little bit of a way. And I've used these things to cope with that as well. Bianca, just checking, can you hear me still? I don't know if I can hear you. No, can you say something though?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm just on mute so that I don't interrupt you with any
good.
background.
Okay. I was like, I think she said something. Yeah, so that's just a little bit of an insight, but I've recently had some adversity situations which I'll touch on, that I have noticed that these practices have helped as well. And that's with the kind of continuation of health concerns and health questions, and we'll call them like just little roadblocks to me wanting to function as the best version of myself. And
let's take that as a tip, guys. Write it down. Call it a little roadblock. Use your language.
Yeah. So I've noticed with myself, and also with working with people, that the power of our mind and the power of our perspective on things can really change our healing experience. It can really change our daily mood if we just remember that we can choose to think differently when we feel safe to take on board these practices. It can really impact ourselves and set us up for success when we are faced with new challenges. And that is something that I've found throughout what I was speaking about just before. That experience has set me up to be able to act differently when I am faced with confronting situations. So I am grateful in that way. And one of those is to acknowledge how you're feeling. So have acknowledgement, acceptance, and adaptation. That's my first tip. And we can look at that in a variety of ways. So when you're faced with an uncomfortable emotion, especially with anxiety and stress, I think a lot of our go-to ways to deal with it is to fight against it. We don't want it. It doesn't feel nice. And sometimes that can work for us in the way of maybe we are not actually equipped to deal with it. So it's best to just distract ourselves. It's not a safe time for us to go there. And distraction can work. And I know that has worked for me. Sometimes my feelings have got bigger than me and it hasn't been the right time to actually confront it. But there are other times where it's really beneficial for us to, if we can, sit with it and treat it like it's our friend. I will be referring a little bit to health during this because it is my calling. It is what I specialize working in. But again, you can use this in different situations. So acknowledging it, if it's anxiety, but also if it's a symptom, how can you make that your friend instead of your enemy? How can you change your relationship with it by acknowledging that it's there, welcoming it? And it might just change your energy from being scared and avoidant to kind of actually being peaceful.
Mm-hmm. And what do you recommend for people to do in welcoming it? Is it just like literally mentally going, it's okay for you to be here, you're welcome? Like, what kind of thoughts or process do you kind of use or recommend?
Yeah. I think that it does depend on you as a person in some ways, and feel free to use this in a way that works for you, with words that work for you. For me personally, and what I would recommend is firstly acknowledging it and kind of calling it a name. Like, that's just anxiety. It's here to say hi.
Calling it a nice name, of course, like a nickname,
yes,
like a brand.
yes, a nickname. labeling it.
Not like you bastard anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. That's just that old friend there, and it's just get curious about it. As I said, it depends on the circumstance and if you're feeling safe to, but you can ask, like, what is it here to teach me? I'm noticing that I'm tense right now. I'm noticing that I'm getting a bit fearful. What is this meaning? And what is this emotion? And remember that it's not you. It's just thoughts. It's just a feeling in your body that you've connected to this word. And you might find that it's like a wave. If you don't work against it, it can just ride over you and just pass by. And then that's when you can be a bit more accepting of it as well. And the acceptance part comes in. For me, when I decided to stop feeding and avoiding this part of me that was like, oh my God, I'm swaying, I've got vertigo, and disliking it, I think my life has really changed. Stopping the ruminating of it, it's that resistance to it. It just makes it stronger. What we're resistant to persists. If you've heard that phrase before, what we resist persists, and I think it's true.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, persistence beats resistance. So if you persist with what you're doing in a positive manner, that beats out the resistance. I would love to chat to you a little bit about that for a second, because rumination is something that's sprung out for me. I know I had a client recently who was really stuck on that, with just letting those thoughts run, and it's totally natural. And bringing everything into context of this year, like, it's normal for us to, in the situations that we've been in, like, have those thought patterns roll and roll and roll and roll. And the more we practice any kind of habit, the more it becomes habit, and it just goes and goes and goes and goes, right?
Yes.
Do you have any tips, other tips for like breaking that, or even just catching that rumination or that resistance?
Yeah. So I think that one big thing that I would recommend, and I have used this myself, is, other than that acceptance, is to notice. I know it sounds like, oh, just notice, and then, well, yeah, but how do you do that? It is a practice, and the more that you actually think about even the word mindful, think about even the word noticing, you just naturally will start noticing. You'll naturally become more inquisitive of your thoughts. Like that's, I'm sometimes to your detriment. You don't want to self-analyze all the time, but it is helpful to just kind of be curious about yourself. And if you can remember to come from that place of curiosity, you might then start to see patterns, and the patterns are in rumination, as Bianca said. And ask yourself a question this as simple as this: is this useful? And that might uncover answers for you of, I'm ruminating, I'm obsessing, I'm going down a dark hole, it's not relevant right now to my present moment, so why am I even doing that? That's things that it uncovers for me, and I think it does for other people, even as simple as, this isn't useful. And it's like a jolt to, like, I'm doing this to myself and it's not helpful.
And what do you then say for like avoiding self-beat up in that moment? Because I know a lot of people be like, I'm doing it again.
Yeah. Be forgiving for yourself, because we all do it. So it's not, is this useful? Oh, what an idiot. It's just, again, coming from that place of curiosity, and a loving curiosity of, oh, okay, I've noticed that, and now I'm going to maybe choose differently because it's not serving me. But that's okay, because it's just a habit, and our brains like habits. Our brains work from being hardwired to act a certain way, and our communication just getting deeper and deeper the more that we feed a certain path, the communication paths, the neural pathways. And everybody can go one way or the other, and it's just, as I said, a practice to try and weaken or strengthen one of those pathways. It's not a right or wrong, it's just what is going to serve me. So if we can practice actually being curious, kindly curious, and then yeah, just thinking, okay, well, I was doing that, but if it's not serving me, I'm going to strengthen that other pathway.
Yeah, perfect. And I like that imagery as well. It's like literally just like, I could walk on this track or I could walk over here. Like that's all it really is.
Yeah.
Choice. And
definitely.
I don't know. I think for me personally, I'm very drawn to exploration. So it's easy for me, but I know from working with clients, it can be difficult to let go of that, like, oh no, I'm doing it wrong or I'm doing it right. It's just I love what you said, kindly curious. I really like that.
Yeah, and I understand that. I've been there. I've been on the whole beating myself up path. Why am I doing this? Why do I think this way? Yeah. I think we all can say that we do that sometimes, dislike ourselves for the way that our brains work. But it's really, I find it really comforting to be able to almost just see it like that, like see yourself like we are just hardwired in certain ways, and it's nobody's, it's not a downfall of, if you are someone that you ruminate or whatever. It's just that it's a simple brain mechanism that we can all fall into, and having self-love is, I think, huge in not beating yourself up in those ways, because self-blame, it just makes everything worse for starters, and it makes things persist. It doesn't change anything. And I think that we can get very wound up in those negatives of ourselves, and wound up in, why can't I be more positive, or why can't I I don't know, like just think differently. But when we drop the stories and drop the what ifs and drop the desiring to be something straight away or someone that we're not with different thoughts. It means that we are just being more present with how we are right now, and then that creates more love for ourselves. It creates more love for having support for ourselves, more love for knowing that we did all that we can. I think that that's a crucial thing to remember. Like, each of us are all doing the best that we can with the information that we have. And
guys, write that one down. That is a winner. That is a winner to take on. We're all doing the best that we can with the information that we have.
Definitely, yeah. And bringing it back to the topic of discomfort or circumstances that are out of our control, adversity, I think it's very common for us to have these regrets, and then that forms a lack of self-love and lack of forgiveness for ourselves, when maybe there's nothing even to forgive ourselves for. Like, we obsess over what could have happened, and it does come down to what I said. Yeah, like, we're all in some way. I did a post about it earlier. If anyone wants to watch, actually, I'll link you to my Instagram. We're all coming from a place of love. Like, intentions so often they start with love. They start with love for ourselves. They start with us wanting the best for ourselves. Like, to link in with my experience, I was awful to myself about going to America. It was like, didn't I see the signs? I wasn't well enough to begin with. Why did I not do this? What if, blah, 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 blah. But then I've turned that around and realized that I can look at it a different way. I went to America because I thought that was an opportunity for myself to be healthier. There were certain aspects of growth that I saw for myself there, but I ignored that side of it for a long time and was furious at myself. And those what ifs and living back in the past, they weren't serving me at all. They were contributing to me feeding that side of myself that didn't have love, that was all rumination and obsessive thoughts that wasn't healthy. So noticing when you have a story that is not coming from a place of love, it's coming from a place of some sort of maybe hatred or regret for yourself, and asking, well, you can ask, is this useful? But you can ask yourself, where in my decision was I doing the best for myself with the information I had at the time? You know, was it really something that I was doing that I didn't think was the right thing at the time? And we're all human, and we never do know what's going to happen. Anything can happen. I think COVID is a big example of that. Like, we don't know where life's going to take us, so we can't live off what ifs and fortune telling for the future and what could have been in the past. Yeah. And I think that kind of is a nice segue into another topic that I was going to bring up, and that's to do with perspective and the power of choice. So yeah, perspective is, I think, what has definitely been huge for me over my life in having a positive attitude. I do repetitively get told that I have been someone that is positive and sees sides of things that maybe other people wouldn't have thought of, and that has made me realize that I do that constantly. And it's definitely helped me in all situations in my life. It's helped me go from being really, really, I don't know, I guess I've suffered with depression and anxiety at different times in my life, and just having that perspective and way that I am able to look at things differently has been a real savior. So I might share a few things about how I do that personally. So there is a trap of realistic optimism. I want to touch on that first.
Oh, interesting.
Have you heard of this?
No, but I feel that I would be in that trap at times.
I love it because it's given it's the term for it. Apparently, maybe there's a few terms, but I was like, yes, that's what it is. Because sometimes there's a bit of a fight against like, well, I don't want to be positive all the time because that's not realistic. You know, it's not realistic that there's all love and light everywhere. And I completely agree. That's we need to acknowledge that there's suffering. There's a lot of suffering in the world, and we all suffer. However, there's also different sides and different perspectives that you can have to everything, which can help you get through the suffering. But I feel like there can be falling into a trap of being too optimistic and not acknowledging the constraints that you have. And then that is not acknowledging emotions. And then those emotions and that energy can get stored to come out at a different time in a different way, or lead to health problems. So I do believe that when I was younger, I was a bit of a optimist, and it worked against me in some ways, because it was not acknowledging the shitty things, not acknowledging I don't feel good right now, I'm in pain, or whatever, family's not going so well. It was just, yeah, but blah, 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 blah. It's okay because, yeah. And while that's great and has its place, you do want to just be able to acknowledge that you are going through something and it's hard, but then also open up a space for looking at different ways to approach it that can be the most beneficial approach to your healing. One way that people might relate is over COVID. You know, it was a big thing, like, well, but I'm lucky because I've still got my job, or I'm lucky because I don't have somebody who's ill, or, you know, whatever it is. And some people might have been crying inside because they were having the most toughest time, even just having to work at home. And that's where this realistic optimism comes in, if that is useful to someone, to remember you're allowed to not feel amazing, but just look at the opportunity for optimism.
Yeah.
And
that's cool.
Yeah. Did you want to say anything about that, Bianca?
No, well, I think it's true that a lot of people would have gone through that. Oh, well, I better consider myself lucky because I don't have COVID, or because at least I have JobKeeper, or you know, whatever. And it's kind of makes their actual things that they are really emotional about, and their own thoughts and feelings, it kind of invalidates them.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, it's not that bad kind of thing. Like, it could be worse. Rather than being like, well, actually, this does suck. I can't see my family. They're interstate or they're overseas. I don't know when I'm going to be able to see them. Or, yeah, I hate working at home. I'm a social person and I love being around my teammates, and my kids are driving me absolutely effing mental right now. Like, but at least I have a job, you know. It's like, allow that to be what it is. But yeah, like you're saying, like, look for the positivity, but, you know, allow what's there as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Validate it.
Yeah, and it comes
they're
back
all
to
valid.
what you said, like perspective and choice.
Yeah,
I have the perspective. Do I want to dwell in the shit? No, not really, but it can be there, and that's okay. It can be my pal.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think there really is something to that, to it being your pal. We can choose when there's a difficult situation to use it to empower us. Like, one sentence that I feel I've used for myself, and I've recommended it to people as well, is, how can I make this the best thing that's happened to me? And I find that hugely empowering. Like, let's fight this, not let it take over me. Let's use this as, wow, what can I use this opportunity to prove to myself that I can actually just come back and and be an even better version of me. And that's where this dark story turns into a light story. That's where I grow. That's where I'm actually taking it upon myself to learn the lessons that I might be being shown right now. I'm making sure that that happens. And think about what that could mean for you if you are someone who's going through a really tough time at the moment. Is there an area in your life that this, for some reason, has created room for growth? So for me living at my mum's and not being able to do much, okay, I couldn't work. I felt very uncomfortable being outside and social because my world was moving, essentially. But I decided, well, this is the time where I'm going to learn more about mindfulness. I'm going to learn more about meditation. I'm going to study my ass off to learn how being present can help me, because it's all I can do right now. And reading was too hard, but I found a way. I listened to lots of audio books, and that was my way of using that time to benefit me then, but also using that time as, it was like, well, this is something I want to do anyway, and I've been given a chance to sit in bed more and do it. And that's the power of choice.
Yeah, I love that. Can you repeat that question again that you ask yourself? Like, how can I make this opportunity? How do you phrase it?
How can I make this the best thing that's happened to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's motivated me at other times. I remember once I was in a car accident and I thought that my voice box was damaged. Went to hospital and got checked up and all that, but it was a very big impact to my throat. And I was petrified because I was like, oh my God, I've wanted to sing my whole life. And what if this takes it away? And I think that we all do have those different moments, whether it's an accident or something else, where we have these like little thoughts of, but this is what I want to do and I'm not done yet. And then it's like, well, how can I use this experience, this traumatic experience, as it's shone a light on something that I really want to do and what I really want to fulfill, and here's my chance to do it. I've been given another chance to do it. And now I take singing lessons. So, and whatever that is for you, maybe you've always wanted to be an artist or work on a piece, and then now you're back in lockdown. Well, this is the chance, this is the time. And we all have those thoughts. It's just about choosing to act on them. And I do believe also in that we will continue to be shown these things until we do fulfill them. And that's why we get repeated lessons in all areas of our life until we've learned the lesson. So having that perspective and knowing that we have the choice to turn something awful into something beautiful in some way, like there's something in there, I find to be very empowering. And I've seen that has changed clients' perspective even in their day of, I'm going to do this now. This is how I can make this day, this moment, this whatever, one of the best things that has happened to me.
Yeah, I love it. Super. And I like that you've touched on a few different things to really get people going, because empowerment and motivation are triggered in so many different ways for different people.
Yeah.
And I love how you've brought in the different pieces of like the kind curiosity and different things, because not one thing works for everybody.
No, that's so true.
Some people will be motivated by one thing and it scares the absolute bejesus out of the next person, like just puts them totally the other way, where they're just frozen and like,
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. And when it comes to healing or being more mindful, opening up yourself to do some personal development work, that's a key thing that Bianca just mentioned. Like, not everything works for everyone, but you can explore different ways, different words, different approaches to have the same outcomes. So please, if you know that there's something that you want to work on, that you want to shift, that you want to be able to face with less stress, there's a way out there. It's just about finding the way that works for you and having someone to talk with you about how can we make this personal to you. I know I've been put off in the past, like, I don't like that. I don't like that sentence, or I don't like that movement. There's so many different things. But then when I've given permission to myself, or when somebody's given permission to me to make it mine, that's made a difference for me. And I've been able to shift things by taking on different ideas from just talking it out with the right person.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you mentioned there, like finding a way, was something that stood out to me before when you were saying like you couldn't read because of the vertigo, like, but you found a way. You got audio books and learned through audio medium, which is like, yeah, it's there, it's available. There's always a way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then even in times of stress, when we're feeling as though we're being faced with I don't know, two roads, like choose this path or choose this path, and we don't like either. Sometimes there's just this untapped, like, how can I make this work? How can I feel okay with this? How can I move forward in a way that is loving and isn't fearful? It does tie in with that curiosity and always being open, and just not seeing things as, well, I was about to say not seeing things as they are, but it's more trying to open up yourself to see things as they are, and not actually with just how you're interpreting it and what you're thinking the outcome has to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just about to say, we do see things how we think they are.
Yeah, how we want them to, not how we want them as such, but yeah, we see things as our perception,
we are.
and sometimes, yeah. Yeah, exactly, that's it. And having kind of this outward focus instead of so there's one aspect of like thinking inward and as opposed to outward that can be beneficial, but when it comes to it in times of stress, where it's becoming very overwhelming for you because you are not able to find that light or whatever, which I totally get. I'm not here to say that all of these simple things can just work like magic. Sometimes the problem is bigger than us, and we might need some additional resources. However, a big thing then is to take your focus outward instead of inward. So focus on people, focus on things that can help you, focus on having a beautiful environment around you. Just tuning into what can help you get through this outside of your mind and trying to like figure it out. It might be being out of nature. It might be, doing exercise, playing music, listening to an audio book, just whatever can distract you from letting it get bigger, letting yourself be immersed in the problem. So ask yourself, what can I focus on other than the problem that can help me? That would be another tip for me, just outward focus.
Yeah, that's a good question to do, and it was something I was going to ask about before my headphones were playing up, and you had said something about distracting yourself when I kind of got back in and could hear you again. And I was going to ask how, like, when is it beneficial to distract yourself? So I guess it's kind of a means of providing perspective, is what I'm hearing, is like, go out, look in nature, like, rather than being stuck here. It's like, just give yourself a bit of space. Is that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because we can just find ourselves when we are faced with a stressful situation. Naturally, it'll grow the more that we, as I said before, resist it, but also the more that we ruminate over it, and the more that we force ourselves to find a solution. So coming back to that state of curiosity, be curious of what energy you're bringing towards it. Is it a stressful, like, got to figure this out, beating yourself up over it, so overly self-analyzing, or is it a curiosity? that is going to bring you peace. And if it is becoming bigger than you, and you are feeling very, very overwhelmed and anxious, and you're not going to get to any solutions necessarily by the rumination, then just focusing on others is so helpful. Focusing on nature, focusing on anything that you know has brought you joy in the past, and using that to be kind of your own therapy of some kind. I feel like each of us do have our own way that we deal with things, and sometimes it is about something in our environment taking our attention instead of being in our heads. And it just depends on what it is for you, as I said, like whether it is focusing on other people or focusing on the environment, music, art, maybe, yeah, whatever your craft is. What we are resisting doing at the time might actually be what helps us most. I think that's a big thing. A lot of artists find themselves, and I know I do this with writing, I do this with my guitar, my singing, when I'm actually down and need it the most, I don't do it. And I'm trying to work on that part of myself, and I encourage others to also see if that's something that they do, because that's sometimes where the healing is. But there's a part of us that is getting wrapped up in fighting for, it sounds so weird, I said it recently, but it's a part of us sometimes that's fighting for our pain. We have like these different sides of us, and there's sides of us that want the best for us, but there's another side of us that is getting used to pain and isn't in our best interest.
Yeah, and it is in a way, because it's like a survival and fear-based drive. And sometimes that's a good way to befriend things, I find, is to go, okay, how has this served me in the past? Like you mentioned before, like, is this useful? Because everything is useful at a certain time in a certain context. But it's probably not, if it's not serving you right now, then it had been useful at some stage, whether it was when you were 2 years old, or whether it was last year when you were going through a breakup, or whatever it was useful. So you learned that as a coping mechanism. But now you do need to ask yourself, is this useful? Is this serving me? Is this helping me? And you can sometimes find the internal release button, if you will, by going in and going, oh, why is this pattern here? Or like, how did it serve me?
Yes.
Why did this develop? And kind of exploring that again with kind curiosity and going, interesting. So I've been doing this for 30 years. And it's probably because whatever, my older sister was much louder than me, and I felt that I had to stand out more. So I started doing this, and then that developed into this, or whatever. You'll realize so many things if you just start to go, okay, what if I did have the answers? Because it's my life and I'm the one who knows it best. Because a lot of the time, if you're doing these processes, especially without a coach, you need to give yourself the label of being in the know, because I'm sure you've experienced this in sessions. People go, I don't know.
And we do know.
And that's just it. It's like, we do know. So keeping in mind, if you're going through some of these practices that Samara has recommended, that you are the authority, and whatever feels like the right answer to you is the answer. There's no wrong or right. It's you, it's your mind, it's your body, it's your life. And your intuition will tell you straight away, even if it doesn't make sense to you. If it doesn't make sense, I'd say you're bang on the mark, to be perfectly honest. A lot of the time. And then other times it will make sense. Like, oh yeah, like the weird example I gave before, like my sister was really loud and I felt that I needed to compete with her, or whatever the situation is. You'll go, well, yeah, that would make sense that this kind of behavior would serve me in that situation.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's it. That each of our behaviors has a place to serve us at a certain time, but then sometimes maybe there's a pattern that develops that it becomes unuseful. It's just a habit.
Totally. And it's like I said before, we are habitual, and we always do the best with what we have at that given time. And sometimes we're just running on autopilot with something that used to serve us. So
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And like what you touched on before, it's something that sometimes was keeping us safe at the time. It was something that we were implementing to keep us safe in a different situation. But that might not be the case for now, and something else might be the best way to keep us safe if we're open to it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I've lost track. Where are we up to?
We're at number 5 now, which is mindfulness, which is very
Yes.
exciting to talk about because that's my thing this year.
Awesome.
So, yeah, one of the biggest things that, again, has helped me through my times of uncertainty and definitely health problems. So, actually, it just ties up all of these, like self-love, being forgiving to yourself, and having perspective, is working on our mindfulness, working on being mindful in the way of, are we in the now? Are we in the past? Are we in the future? And the reason I think that this does help through difficulties is because unless we are practicing mindfulness and a quite, I guess, well practiced, it's very easy for our minds to always be in the past or the future. And during times of difficulties and uncertainty, we can catastrophize things when we have no idea what the outcome is. And I've done this too, and it's something I am working on. Um, and we almost make the situation so much bigger than it is, when all that has happened is we've been told a bit of information. But checking in with yourself and assessing it just based on that information can be so helpful. And then not jumping to the past of that whole, again, like, what if I did this? I should have done this. I should blah, 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 blah. Because we never know what's going to happen, and we never know the outcome.
Mm-hmm. And to go into just mindfulness, if people are kind of like, what do you mean by mindfulness practice?
Yes.
So how do I know if I'm being mindful? Do you want to kind of
Yeah,
give us
sure.
your definition of mindfulness, or what you feel it is?
Yeah. So in this instance, well, I'm talking about checking in with yourself. If you are, so the question that I would ask, and the question that I would take away from this, if you want to incorporate it, is, where am I right now? And then you can think, am I in, it just is, it's again another one of those quick things to ask yourself to check in. Am I in the future? Am I in the past? Or am I in the now? And often this can be helpful to bring us back to being present. And this is an element of mindfulness. It's living in the now. It is seeing things as they are, and not how we have internalized them to be. It is about training your mind so that it is freer to actually experience life as it is, and life as it is happening for us now, not what we think it will be, not what we want it to be. It takes out the shoulds. It's just a practice of being aware of what is in the now. And then that also helps us with everything that we've talked about. The more that we do strengthen that muscle to ask ourselves, where am I right now? The more that we are to recognize our thoughts, our behaviors, our patterns, our stresses, whether they are getting blown up in, they call it fortune telling, like we're fortune telling of something that may or may not happen. And it can drive you crazy. Like, it can really drive you crazy. I feel so passionate about mindfulness. It's shocking that it's not taught in school. I think that it's in some like early stages, I suppose, teachings in schools now.
Yeah, which is good news.
Yeah, amazing. So great. Because it can really, I can't speak for everybody, of course, but it can really make amazing shifts with perspective, and with stopping stresses when they might actually not happen. And it really helps you understand your mind a lot more as well. I've learned so many things since trying to practice mindfulness a lot more. And it also is so beneficial to hearing messages from our intuition. it's beneficial to us getting to know ourselves, as me and Bianca were touching on before. Like, we know so many answers, so many, if we were able to just tune in and be present with ourselves, and that could overcome all of the noise that we all naturally experience from life and opinions and everything. And when it comes to difficulties, mindfulness helps, because I think especially with health, we can get caught up in what we may experience. We can worry about a possible diagnosis. We can be functioning off what we have experienced instead of what we are right now, because we're so caught up in it, we're so used to it. And that's a big thing with symptoms in general. Like, there's an aspect of needing to rewire your brain neural pathways to adjust to actually feeling better. And there's so much in that, getting out of the practice of what you've actually been feeling, because that's what's needed to feel differently. And I know, to give a real life example, I spoke to Bianca about it the other day. This has seriously helped me. I was faced with a difficult doctor's appointment recently where they told me that I've got like two different issues. And I think a few years ago, I would have heard what they said, and I would have, my mind would have just blown up. It would have, I would have gone down a bit of an anxious hole. And instead, I was able to notice that was a possibility. I heard what was said to me. I sat with it. I mindfully didn't distract myself, because and again, it depends on what's working for you. In the past, maybe that would have served me, but I was like, no, I need to sit with this. I need to acknowledge that I've been told something that's emotional. But also, I was able to kind of think to just go off what I know now. I don't know the whole story. I don't know everything. I don't need to go there with worrying about my future so much. It's just thinking about the information I know now, and being kind to myself, addressing the emotions, and then not letting it get bigger than me, which is another, I guess, important aspect of dealing with stress. It's like, I'm going to acknowledge that I'm feeling crap, like what we spoke about before, not validating it. And then, okay, I've had my time, I've experienced it, I've let that energy move through me, that emotion move through me, that's healthy. I haven't rejected it. And now I'm going to be back in my now and see what comes next. Yeah.
Perfect. That's so nice. We've had Adam say hello on Facebook in the comments there.
Hi, Adam.
He said consciousness, awareness to surrender. That was about 4 minutes ago, though.
Yeah, surrendering to what is.
Yeah.
Surrendering to not having that resistance. Yeah,
totally.
And accepting.
Yeah, which was one of your early pieces.
Yeah.
So do you just want to recap for us the overview of like what you've gone through, like just the titles? You've got like the perspective and choice. You've got
So we first talked about the idea of having acknowledgement, and that's about acknowledging that your emotions are there, creating some space for them if you feel safe, and then having some acceptance around them. Again, it's dependent on the situation, but if you can find that you're able to accept that it's there and adapt how you feel is necessary. So it's acknowledgement, acceptance, and adaptation. 3 things to think about when you're faced with strong emotions. And the next one we spoke about was self-love, and I touched on self-love and forgiveness. So yeah, I won't go into it too much again, but that was covered. And then having perspective and the power of choice. That we can choose how we face things. We can choose what we want to see in it. We can choose if we want to see love in it, light in it, positive outcomes, but also, again, remembering to acknowledge how we're feeling. And then when you're able to, as much as we can, do some curiosity with our thoughts and how we're dealing with things, also allow yourself to take your focus outward. Focus on, I mean, one of the top things of, there was a scientific research done on it, of what aids our happiness is focusing on other people. So especially in a time of stress, like just getting yourself out of your own head and focusing on helping others, like that gives us more gratification. When we do things for others, it makes us happier than when we do things for ourselves. It's a scientific fact, apparently. So yeah, taking your focus outward and on anything that you know gives you joy. And mindfulness, being mindful of if you're stuck in the present, the past, or the future, and know that bringing yourself back to the present is very helpful. And one last statement, actually. This is taken from, I can't remember his name. But anyway, it's asking yourself, it's a very Buddhism-based statement. It's what do I have a problem? No, what is the problem? Sorry, I don't want to ruin it, but is there something like, is there a problem right now? And it gets you to recognize, is what I am thinking about actually right now? Is there something happening right now? And I find that really helpful as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, teamed with where am I right now, which you mentioned earlier as well. Just really bringing it back in. It's like, oh, I'm thinking about how I stuffed that thing up 3 weeks ago, and it's like, yeah, but where am I right now?
Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. Do you want to share with people where they can find you and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Bianca said before, I'm a health and wellbeing coach, a wellness coach. I do operate through Instagram. I do have a YouTube account that is slowly going to have some videos on there, but you can subscribe. Instagram is my name, and that's the same with my Facebook and my YouTube, which I suppose
you're already tagged.
I'm tagged. So yeah, and in the way of, if you're interested in kind of learning more about these things, learning more about yourself, or interested in working with me, I do discovery calls where we learn a little bit more about each other, and we set in steps to get you on a path for better wellness in that call, and there's no obligation. So it's a nice way to connect.
Yeah. Beautiful. Guys, do connect with Samara. She is an absolute gem of a human being.
Thank you, Bianca.
We worked together a couple of years ago, and yeah, she's just an absolutely beautiful soul. And as you can tell from, if you're still here right now and you've watched the whole thing, you know she's got some real value to offer there. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've loved, the little bits and pieces that you've dropped in. Even just the one-liners were really good, like just those simple questions that you can ask yourself to gain that perspective, or really get some really cool insights into what's going on within. So thank you so much, and
thank you for chatting with me.
Oh, one more thing.
Sure.
Well, Matt asked a question in the comments on yesterday's promo post.
Do you
want to just respond in the comments for that one, given that it's not really something you can?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do that. I will respond, Matt. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Thank you. And thank you for all that has watched. I hope this has been useful for you.
Yay. Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Bye.